Hello, welcome back to ICR and this is season 2 of Doctor Who. The second season of Doctor Who ran between the 31st of October 1964 and the 24th of July 1965. The original cast all returned, but for the first time on the show, 3 of the main actors would leave throughout the season and were replaced by others. It would be made up of 9 serials over a total of 39 episodes and had 2 Dalek specials. In the second serial, Carol Ann Ford, who portrayed Susan, would be the first cast member to ever leave Doctor Who. And in the next episode, Vicky Pallister, played by Maureen O'Brien, was joined as a regular. Then, in the serial The Chase, both William Russell and Jacqueline Hill were replaced by Peter Purvis as Stephen Taylor. Also, just a friendly reminder that this video contains spoilers for season 2 of Doctor Who. Of the black and white seasons from the 1960s, this is the only one with the most complete stories. There are only 2 episodes missing from the serial The Crusade, and this season also builds upon the lore of the planet of the Doctor and Susan come from, with another person from this planet appearing in the Time Meddler, the last episode of the season. Similarly to the previous season, it was produced by Verity Lambert and the script editors were Dennis Spooner and David Whittaker. Dennis Spooner replaced David Whittaker after the second serial The Dalek Invasion of Earth. After the success of the first season, Verity Lambert was granted an initial 13 episodes, which included 3 serials, which was then expanded by a further 26 episodes, totalling 39. Planet of Giants. Planet of Giants was supposed to be made up of 4 episodes, but after the head of serials, Donald Wilson, saw the finished product, he ordered that the last 2 episodes be edited into 1, giving 3 episodes that were aired. Anything that was left over was used to produce the single episode Mission to the Unknown in season 3, although most of it was scrapped. Although the last 2 original episodes do not exist in its entirety, the editing process in the 1960s destroyed the original 6mm recordings, the scripts have been used with surviving actors to provide an audio of them. It was written by Louis Marks and directed by Mervyn Pinfield and Douglas Camfield. It was the first episode to be set in contemporary England since An Unearthly Child. The episode idea came from the ecology work by Rachel Carson called Silent Spring, which was against the use of insecticides in garden work. Silent Spring focused on the dangerous use of pesticides developed using military funding after the Second World War, wreaking havoc on local wildlife and ecosystems. This serial is widely regarded as being the first Doctor Who story which directly deals with issues surrounding environmentalism and human beings polluting the earth.
This must be an exhibition, Susan. Something like the World's Fair. Things this size.
As usual, something goes wrong when the TARDIS lands, and when the crew goes outside, they find that the ship and themselves have been severely shrunk down to about an inch tall. While trying to figure out what happened, Ian accidentally ends up in the briefcase of a businessman named Forrester. The crew find themselves in the middle of a plot between Forrester and his scientist friend Smithers to launch a brand new insecticide. However, the insecticide is so deadly that it kills all of the creatures in the garden regardless of whether or not they help agriculture. Forrester ends up murdering a civil servant who tries to stop him, all in the attempt to get rich quick. The TARDIS gang realise what has happened, and after some investigation, the Doctor realises how dangerous the formula is. Working together, the gang tries to report the matter to the police by getting in touch with the switchboard operator. Unbeknownst to them, the switchboard operator overhears Forrester and his scientists plotting, sending out the local constable to get things sorted. Unfortunately, while this is all going on, Barbara gets affected by the insecticide, and she starts to fall ill. Trying to stop the process of the insecticide, the Doctor and Ian decide to set fire to the place in order to destroy all the research. They do this by using a Bunsen burner to ignite a can of insecticide which hits Forrester just in time for the constable to arrive and arrest both men. The TARDIS crew make their escape back to the TARDIS and the Doctor brings them back to their normal lives, just in time to save Barbara.
But help us.
It's out of the question, my dear. How can we possibly communicate with them?
Imagine a record played at the wrong speed, Susan. We'd sound like a little squeak to them, and they'd sound like a low growl to us.
Planet of Giants, for me, is such a good Doctor Who story because it's short, especially. It's all well kind of compacted into one. It's got kind of horror of being in a situation that you can't get out of immediately. The whole being shrunk down to little people and seeing all the kind of creatures walking about and seeing all the dead creatures and then all that kind of stuff. And it's got brilliant sci-fi concepts. The kind of physics behind it is also good. Like there's a scene where they're trying to shout to people down the phone, and because they're so small, their voices are really, really, really high pitched, and the voices of the big people are like really, really low pitched. So it's got some really cracking physics concepts in there and some really good sci-fi elements in there, and that's why I kind of really appreciate this story. It also kind of starts bringing about, like, plants the seeds from the previous season of Susan being very discontent in her traveller or wanderer life, which kind of sets up the next episode really well. Or the next serial, I should say. There's some really good kind of character moments, especially between Ian and Barbara, as Barbara is slowly becoming sicker and sicker with the insecticide poisoning, and Ian doesn't know. So, and she doesn't want to tell him because she's scared. So she basically lashes out against him, and Ian's like, "It's okay, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. We're going to get big," but he doesn't know, and that kind of sets up a really good kind of conflict between Ian and Barbara, which kind of pulls them closer together, which kind of shows how strong their relationship is throughout the seasons. On the whole, I think Planet of Giants is probably one of my favourite First Doctor stories. It's up there, just because it's just so wacky and brilliantly done, and it's just got such a good concept throughout it that I just really enjoy it a lot. Especially the scene where the cat is coming down at them, and they're all sitting there as a little four, and the cat's coming down and kind of going ooh at the end of I think that's the end of the second episode, or is it the end of the first episode maybe? I don't know. I really like that episode, that cliffhanger. It's so funny. So that's why I do really like Planet of Giants, and I think it's a solid story. The Dalek Invasion of Earth. The Dalek Invasion of Earth was one of the most notable episodes of Doctor Who. Not only did it cement the Daleks as a returning threat, but it was set in London. This furthered the Dalek mania which had sprung up the year before. Now you could see Daleks roaming Trafalgar Square and Westminster Bridge. Not only that, but the first major change was coming at the end of this serial. Susan Foreman, the Doctor's granddaughter, played by Carol Ann Ford, was leaving. It was written by Terry Nation, directed by Richard Martin, produced by Verity Lambert, and consists of 6 25-minute episodes. However, the scene with Susan's departure at the very end of the episode 6 was written by David Whittaker. This was also the last serial that David Whittaker was the script editor. Just like the previous Dalek serial, The Daleks, this one inspired another spin-off movie which starred Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. The film also featured Bernard Cribbins in his first role to do with Doctor Who, as he would later be cast as Wilfred Mott in Series 4 of The New Who. During the filming of the second episode of the serial, William Hartnell fell into the metal camera stand, causing him to be temporarily paralysed. This led to one of the episodes not featuring the Doctor in order for him to have time to recover.
Careful, Doctor. I'm not a half-wit.
The TARDIS lands, and Barbara and Ian are delighted to realise that they are in London. However, as they have a look around, they start realising that everything is not what it seems. Suddenly there's a landslide which buries the TARDIS, and while the Doctor and Ian go off to figure out what is going on, Barbara and Susan, who is sporting a rather bad sprained ankle, are found by a man who warns them to get out of public eye, and Susan gets taken away by another man named Tyler. They try and convince their new acquaintances to go back for the Doctor and Ian, but it falls on deaf ears. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Ian see a flying saucer hovering above the city and try to return to the girls only to find them missing. Then, suddenly, something is rising from the water of the Thames, something that they have seen before. Back with the girls, they have arrived at an underground bunker where a small resistance group have been hanging out. They explain that the Daleks invaded the Earth and quickly took control, although little factions have been trying to fight back rather unsuccessfully. In this area, they meet a young man named David, who becomes a fast friend of Susan. Barbara also finds that the resistance group has been working to create a bomb to wipe out the Dalek spaceships. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Ian are taken prisoners into the spaceship when they find out that Daleks can operate on some of their prisoners, turning them into Robomen and causing them to eventually go mad. The other prisoners are sent to a mining area in Bedfordshire. The Daleks decide to send Ian to the mines, and the Doctor is to become a Roboman. After an assault on the spaceship led by their resistance group, they manage to save the Doctor, although David and Susan get lost and Barbara gets injured. Barbara and Jenny, one of the resistance fighters, travels with a scientist to the Transport Museum in order to get more supplies for another bomb. In order to help Barbara and Jenny escape, the scientist sacrifices himself as Barbara plows down the Daleks in a double-decker bus. Susan and David manage to find the escaped Doctor and they attempt to travel north to get to safety. The Doctor ends up passing out, so Susan and David hide him until they can find a safe way out. They traverse through London's sewer system, getting attacked by all sorts of creatures in the process. Ian ends up in the mines and turns to Black Marketeer in order to escape back to London. Susan and David, along with the Doctor, manage to get further into the countryside and, Barbara and Jenny end up being caught by the Daleks as they near Bedfordshire, and Barbara tries bluffing about a resistance plot to keep themselves alive. The Doctor, sending Susan and David off into safety, break into the Dalek command centre, rescuing Barbara and Jenny in the process. While trying to save themselves from an explosion in the mines, they manage to find Ian. The explosion destroys the Dalek spaceship, saving Earth in the process. Now comes the bit that defined the companion's leaving process forever. The Doctor, realising Susan has fallen in love with David, locks her out of the TARDIS and bids farewell before leaving with only Ian and Barbara.
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine.
The Dalek invasion of Earth. Well, what can I say about this one? That last speech from the Doctor to Susan as he's leaving her behind is probably one of my favourite speeches in Doctor Who history. It's just perfectly crafted, and it's just given such a heartfelt moment that it just kind of ruins you and makes you really like teary-eyed throughout it, and I honestly really love it. David is Scottish, so who can fault him for that? And he also looks really like my friend Matt for some reason. So who knows? I really like this story. It does feel a little bit extended or stretched, but not to the same extent that the first Dalek serial, The Daleks, was. I kind of have that problem with a lot of Dalek serials, as they seem slightly stretched out further than they could be. Like, they could be condensed a little bit, especially in the first couple of seasons. I think the only one that I've got to watch now is the Daleks Master Plan, which will kind of confirm whether or not I believe that, but also that's like 10 episodes long, so who knows. I think it's a good serial, and it's got some great bits, like when Barbara knocks over the Daleks with the bus. I just really like Barbara and how much she just doesn't give any cares in the world for the Daleks. And it also a couple of the scenes where they're crossing Trafalgar Square or the bridge. It adds a lot of grounding to the story, so it doesn't really feel like a sci-fi show. It feels like something that could happen in the future, and that's what I really do love about this serial. The Rescue. After the long and heavy serial, The Dalek Invasion of Earth, the show wanted a short and simple serial which acted as the perfect conduit to introduce a new companion. It was written by David Whittaker, directed by Christopher Barry, and produced by Verity Lambert. Similar to that of the Season 1 serial The Edge of Destruction, it consists of 2 25-minute episodes, coming to the length of a new series episode. The script editor was David Spooner. Vicky Pallister, played by Maureen O'Brien, was the first companion to be invited into the TARDIS, mainly because Barbara and Ian were basically kidnapped.
Well, maybe we're going to see a new side to the Doctor.
Yeah, well, he isn't getting any younger, is he? You know, it's the first time he's been to sleep during a landing. You know, Barbara, I've got an idea he's getting a bit...
Remember, I can hear what you're saying.
So, the episode starts on a desolate planet with a crashed spaceship. There's only 2 people alive on the craft, Bennett and a young girl named Vicky. The TARDIS lands on the planet, and although not because of the Doctor, he was fast asleep, the Doctor is heartbroken after leaving Susan, and Barbara tries to look after them. However, they leave him in the TARDIS, analysing a rock sample, and go explore. When they spot the crashed ship, they try to return to the Doctor, but their path is blocked by a mysterious monster. Ian is sent for the Doctor while the monster holds Barbara hostage, and as soon as Ian is out of sight, the monster pushes Barbara off the cliff and causes a cave-in, trapping Ian and the Doctor inside the cave. Vicky saves Barbara and hides her when the monster from the cliff appears at the crashed spaceship. The monster, Quillian, is threatening Vicky and Bennett and keeping them hostage. After Quillian leaves, Vicky tells Barbara how their ship crashed and how the entire crew were slaughtered by the locals, with only a badly wounded Bennett managing to escape back to the crash site where Vicky was sleeping. Meanwhile, Ian and the Doctor escape from the cave system and are reunited with Barbara and meet Vicky for the first time. The Doctor and Vicky quickly hit it off, and when they try to confront Bennett, they start to unravel the plot of what really happened in the crash. Turns out, Bennett killed the entire crew and used Quillian as a front to scare Vicky into doing what he wanted. With this information, Vicky finds herself utterly alone, with her father being killed by Bennett. She accepts the Doctor's invitation to come aboard, and the TARDIS dematerialises into the unknown.
But that means you're about 550 years old. Well, yes, I suppose I am.
The rescue. Now, the rescue introduces Vicky, who I absolutely adore. Vicky's such a good character. She's so funky and splunky and is chaotic and just kind of acts in everything that kind of Susan wasn't. So Susan was she was smart and she was kind of more passive, but Vicky's the opposite. She just loves causing chaos. And I think that is definitely showed in the later episodes or serials, but in this one, she's kind of still recovering from the fact that her family's dead. She's being held hostage on the planet, and she's still trying to rebel slightly against what's going on by looking after Barbara and keeping her safe. And when they meet the Doctor and they unravel the plot, then they realise that poor Vicky's going to be sitting here alone for a couple of days until the rescue ship can come. So Vicky decides to go with them instead, and that begins her journey as part of the TARDIS crew. And it was a really good episode because it's kind of more like a whodunit than mixed with sci-fi elements, which is a really kind of interesting way of doing it. And the first time I watched this, I didn't realise what the twist was. So finding the twist again was like, oh, it is a good twist, and it's a solid set of episodes, and it's short. So like The Edge of Destruction, it feels like a New Who episode. It feels that kind of short, well-rounded episode that kind of hits you properly and does well. The Romans. The fourth serial gave us the first historical of the season in the form of The Romans. It was the first set of episodes to split its tone between comedic and drama. It was written by Dennis Spinner, directed by Christopher Barry, and produced by Verity Lambert, being made up of 4 25-minute episodes. By this point, historicals were already wearing a bit thin for script editor David Whittaker, although, due to the funeral of Winston Churchill, it actually performed rather badly compared with the other serials. This was also the first time that a major actor at the time requested to star in Doctor Who. This was Derek Francis, who previously worked with William Hartnell in the Carry On films. He played Nero. The episode focuses on the Great Fire of Rome and the events leading up to it. It also highlights the different aspects of the Roman civilization, such as slave trading, spy rings, and the whims of a mad dictator. Notably, it was the first historical which was not aiming to be historically accurate, with many comparisons to the film's Carry On Cleo, which was in production at the same time.
You know, I am so constantly outwitting the opposition, I tend to forget the delights and satisfaction of the arts, the gentle art of fisticuffs.
The TARDIS appears on the edge of a cliff and before it can take off again, falls down, crashing into the ground below. The episode then cuts to a month later where the Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Vicky have taken over a local villa, relaxing and taking in the local sights. The Doctor decides that he should travel to Rome, so him and Vicky leave behind Ian and Barbara, who are still relaxing. On the road to Rome, they come across a body of a musician, and in the spur-of-a-moment decision, the Doctor steals his instrument and his identity. Due to the mix-up, a local soldier tries to kill the Doctor before they do the old fisticuffs, and they escape to continue their journey. At the villa, a group of slave traders capture Ian and Barbara when they aren't looking. They are separated, with Barbara being taken to Rome, being sold to the palace as a maid for the Empress, and Ian is put to work in a slave ship. Ian escapes, and with a friend he made in the ship, travels to Rome. At last, all 4 are in the same city, although they are almost unaware of each other. The Doctor realises while meeting Nero that the reason that the real musician was killed was due to the fact that he was going to be used to assassinate Nero. Panicked, he pretends to play the lyre, which infuriates Nero. Barbara is harassed by him as he is maid to the Empress, which leads to the Empress trying to poison her, rather unsuccessfully. Ian and his friend Delos get sent to the Colosseum to fight to the death. Nero drags Barbara along to see this fight, and when she realises that it is Ian, she helps Ian and Delos escape the guards and fight. However, she is not quite able to get herself away. While Ian tries to plot to save Barbara, the Doctor and Vicky realise that Nero wants to build a new Rome. They accidentally knock over a candle, prompting Nero to get the idea to burn Rome to the ground. Realising that they have a chance to leave, the Doctor and Vicky quickly leave Rome. In the chaos of the burning, Ian and Barbara also escape, together. When they meet up at the villa, each pretend to the other that their trip went well, not realising that each pair was part of the chaos.
Oh, now you've had a nice long holiday, I'm sure. You can't wait to get back to the TARDIS, hmm?
If you let us get a word in edgeways,
It will have to keep. Have a great...
The Romans. So the Romans is chaotic, to say the least. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens that I didn't even mention in the description, and it's more played for comedy than it is played for drama, unlike any of the other serials that came before it. So if you can laugh at it, then you'll get on a lot better than if you can't. Again, it's the comedic timing of one of the scenes where they're in the square and all four of them are in the square at the one time. Then you've got Doctor and Vicky are witnessing a slave auction, but then Doctor goes, "Oh no, Vicky, you can't see that," and turns right as Barbara's brought on the stage. And then you've got Ian in the corner who's blocked by a pillar, so they can't see the Doctor and Vicky, watching Barbara trying to get her home, and it's just comedic timing, absolutely brilliant. Otherwise, this is kind of a middle of the road historical episode. It's alright. It's not brilliant, doesn't blow me away, but it's not bad in the slightest. The costumes are good, there's some nice comedy, it's kind of history behind it isn't quite as accurate. They play sexual harassment for laughs, which I'm not a big fan of, but the 60s, I guess, don't sexually harass people. That isn't funny. But who can say? But that is the Romans, and there was a lot of parallels between that and the Carry On Cleo film that was in production at the same time, but it's basically not a comparable thing. The Web Planet. Ah, an iconic episode. Truly an episode of such a calibre no one would want to forget it. The Web Planet is the 5th serial of Season 2. The aim of this serial was the attempt to introduce a villain so evil and so iconic to rival the Daleks. It was written by Bill Strutton, directed by Richard Martin, and produced by Verity Lambert. Bill Strutton credits his initial idea for the story as a memory as he has of being bitten by a bull ant while he was younger, and watching different insects fight. He also wanted to bring about a merchandising boost, with the creatures rivaling the attention that Terry Nation, the creator of the Daleks, received. Dennis Spooner agreed to this idea, referring to how he saw the concept for the serial as a parable of socialism. This serial is considered one of the more ambitious ones of Verity Lambert's run, with everything from the technical aspects to the promotion being turned up a notch. It was the first ever Doctor Who story to have a trailer and is still the only Doctor Who serial to not feature any humanoid characters other than the main 4.
Wrong, my boy. We've been dragged off our course. The question is it some natural phenomena, or is it intelligent, deliberate, or for a purpose?
So, what is this very hyped up and expensive serial about? Good question. While traversing through the space, the TARDIS is suddenly caught in some sort of invisible force, being dragged down to the surface of a desolate planet. When it lands, nothing on it works except the scanner, causing the Doctor to be extremely concerned. When he realises that he cannot fix it, he and Ian go outside into the planet to explore. They wear these funky atmospheric density jackets that look cracking, which allows them to breathe easier. Once outside, they almost immediately sense that something is wrong. Ian's gold pen disappears out of his hand, and the echoes of their voices seem to take on a life of their own. It is then that they discover a pool of acid sitting open on that planet's surface. Meanwhile, back in the TARDIS, something strange is happening to Barbara. The golden bracelet that she got from Nero in the previous episode takes control of her arm, pulling her towards the unknown. She is captured by a butterfly-like creature and is taken into a cave, and the bracelet is removed. The Doctor and Ian return to the TARDIS only to find it missing. A group of ant creatures has the TARDIS, and with Vicky inside it. Quickly, Ian and the Doctor join Vicky in being captured by the ants. There is a disembodied voice thing instructing these ants what to do, and it immediately hates the Doctor. Turns out the ant creatures are invading the planet and plan to get rid of its native inhabitants, the Menatra. While pretending to help the Zarbi, Ian escapes and tries to find Barbara, and finds his own group of Menaptra. Him and his new friend Vrestrin try and hide from the Zarbi by hiding in the cave, although they soon become trapped. Barbara gets captured and is sent to work by the Zarbi. The planet's history is explained, but if I'm honest, it's just too complicated and long-winded to just go watch it if you're really dying to know. A bunch of other stuff happens with these bad boy ants and the good Menaptra, or whatever it's called, but the Menaptra rise up and overthrow the Zarbi with the Doctor's and Vicky's help. The pools which are acid are now normal water, and the gang leaves in happy knowledge that they managed to save everyone, except the bad guys.
Will you come back to Vortis?
Oh, I doubt it, Restin. But, knowing the Doctor, you can never be sure.
The Web Planet. Well, I don't even know what to say about it. This is simultaneously one of the worst and one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever. Like, it's so bad it's good. Well, is it so bad it's good? Is it good at all? I don't know anymore. It's just such a state of an episode. Like, you've got these butterfly creatures who are going like this the entire time as they speak in their butterfly costumes, or bumblebee costumes, Menaptra or whatever they're called, and then you've got these ant things which are going like that and hitting into cameras and walking into walls and stuff like that, and the story is just, I don't even know what the story is about, if I'm honest. It's just back and forth and the history telling, and I mean, I understand that it was ambitious, it just doesn't work at all. And it's remembered, it wanted it to be remembered, but it's remembered for all the wrong reasons. All the messes that was made, the amount of money that went into it. To be fair, it was one of the most highly watched episodes of the season. It was in this 6-part serial. I just found it so deadly dull. I just can't. I don't even know what to say about it. It's just, I mean, if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can go and watch it. It's on Britpop. The Crusade. The Crusade contains the only 2 missing episodes of the season. The first and third episodes are missing, although the second and fourth exist. The 2 missing episodes have not been animated yet, so I listened to the audio reconstruction and narration. It was narrated by William Russell. It was written by David Whittaker, directed by Douglas Camfield, and produced by Verity Lambert. It consisted of 4 25-minute episodes. This serial showed a notable difference between the Doctor's characterisations, with his thoughts on bravery and foolishness discussed, as well as him attempting to interfere in the past. It is another pure historical, this time focusing on King Richard and the Crusades of the 12th century. The first episode, The Lion, was originally missing, but it was found in New Zealand just before 1999. When a number of collectors began searching for the missing episodes, the collector that had realised what it was was sent to the BBC for verification purposes and was confirmed to be the original missing episode. It was a significant recovery for a lot of people in the UK, especially amongst fan circles. This episode also suffers from problems of Season 1. There is a number of Palestinians portrayed in this episode by white British actors. In the description below, I am going to link to a number of resources discussing this.
This woman can rot in one of Saladin's prisons until her hair turns white, before I'll trade with the man that killed my friends.
The TARDIS materialises in a forest. When they exit to look around, they are caught up in a skirmish between 2 sets of soldiers. Without knowing what's going on, Ian decides to get fighting, and Barbara is carried off by one of the soldiers. While the other ones turned out to be English, Barbara ends up a prisoner of war with another Englishman in the camp of the Sakharins. When they talk, Barbara figures out they have managed to find themselves in the middle of the Crusades in the late 12th century. The man, William, and Barbara decide to be the king and his sister Joanna in order to keep themselves safe, although they are soon caught out and the truth is revealed. Meanwhile, the Doctor, Ian and Vicky find King Richard's court. They try and convince the king to help save Barbara, but he is uninterested and keeps dismissing them out of hand. After much convincing, Ian is knighted and allowed to go and try and bargain for Barbara at Saladin's court. However, Ian never gets here, as he is kidnapped by a man who is trying to hold him ransom. Barbara tries multiple times to escape the court of Saladin, but fails at all of her attempts. Ian tricks his kidnapper into releasing him and manages to get to the court just in time to stop Barbara from being killed. The Doctor and Vicky sneak away from King Richard's court, manages to meet up with a fleeing Ian and Barbara, and escapes into the TARDIS. Personally, this is an interesting story for me, mainly due to the fact that at a certain point where the Doctor tries to get the king to change his plans. Vicky calls him out on it, and he explains that he should know better. It is an interesting parallel to the previous season's episode The Aztecs, where the Barbara and Doctor had a very similar discussion.
I wish that I were a hawk, sire, and Saladin my prey.
Now there's a subject for our troubadours and actors. Speak to the Chamberlain about it, I beg you, Demara.
Next up is the Crusade. So the Crusade's the only one that doesn't have the full episode recovered for season 2 of Doctor Who. So episodes 1 and 3 are missing, and for those two I listened to the narration by William Hartnell. The narration, as always, is pretty good. I enjoyed it. I didn't really love this serial all too much. And it wasn't so much anything to do with anything in particular. I just didn't like any of the characters. Like, I know you're supposed to like King Richard because he's King Richard, but also he was a bit of a dick, and I don't really tend to root for people who are dicks. So you've got that. You've got Saladin's camp. Saladin was actually alright. He was nice. Saladin's brother was a bit of an asshole as well, but we'll live with that. The Barbara getting captured and kind of escaping kind of trick kind of comes back to what I didn't like about the Romans and the whole sexual harassment played for laughs kind of thing. Although it wasn't really played for laughs so much here, but it was played for horror, and the only difference is that it's the enemy of the Crusades when King Richard were invading somebody else's land and then being angry that they fought back for some reason. There's a lot of history here which I don't feel entirely qualified to speak on because I don't know that much about it. I obviously know the basic research, but on the whole I just don't know that much about the Crusades. The Space Museum. The Space Museum was the first story in Doctor Who history to explore the dimensions of space and time, showing them as malleable and changeable. It was also known for creating some original sci-fi elements, including alternate timelines. It was written by Glyn Jones, directed by Mervyn Penfield, and produced by Verity Lambert. It is made up of 4 25-minute episodes. This serial also uses a special effect which was extremely rare in the 1960s. In this scene where Vicky breaks the glass and is brought together back again, it was shot entirely on film rather than videotape. The effect of reversing the glass could not be done using the videotape. So, the TARDIS arrives on a museum planet which is home to many different types of space technology. Much to their surprise, they all seem to have changed clothes as they landed, though they all know that they did not do that themselves. Vicky drops a glass of water and it comes together again in her hand. The Doctor notes that the dimensions of time seems to be out of joint and suggests that they explore. In the museum halls, the local people cannot seem to hear or see the travellers, and they are not leaving any footprints in the sand. As part of exhibitions, they see a Dalek, which is the first time that Vicky has ever seen one. Further into the museum, they find the TARDIS as an exhibition and turn around to see themselves condensed in glass cases. They realise that they are seeing the future, and if they do not sort it, they will become those exhibits. A game of cat and mouse begins between the museum curators and our gang. Suddenly thrown into the mix is a young gang of rebels who are trying to get their planet back. The rebels kidnap the Doctor, but he manages to outwit them and escapes, although soon gets caught by the monarchs who run the museum. After being rather unsuccessfully interrogated, he is taken to become one of the exhibits. Meanwhile, the other 3 get separated from each other and Vicky meets up with a rebel and tries to start a rebellion in true Vicky style.
What is your name?
Vicky?
For what purpose are the arms needed?
Revolution!
Barbara finds a lone rebel. Together they try and escape the poison gas that the monarchs are using to flush them out, and Ian manages to hold people hostage until he finds the Doctor. He manages to save the Doctor, and although he is stopped and the duo are unlocked aside the preparation room, Barbara and Vicky are finally brought together by the rebels and they find themselves in the preparation room as well. Ian, in a desperate attempt to change the future, destroys the machine to create the exhibitions, and the rebels successfully overthrow the monarchs and the gang escapes to the TARDIS to materialise into the unknown. This was an interesting take on the theme of timelines and changing the future in a way that set the future precedent for Doctor Who and the sci-fi genre.
Time, like space, although a dimension in itself, also has dimensions of its own.
The Space Museum. Now, the Space Museum is cracking. It's got such a good base and it introduces so many good sci-fi concepts, especially ones that were kind of proper build up the Doctor Who universe. So you've got the whole time can be rewritten thing coming into it. time is malleable, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, that kind of thing coming into it. It's just such a good serial from that kind of point of view. You've also got Vicky starting a rebellion, which is always fun, and that's what she deserves because she deserves the world. Then you've got Barbara doing whatever Barbara does, being kind and helping people. And then you've got Ian deciding to just absolutely go apeshit and hold up places so that he can try and rescue the Doctor, which is the most chaotic I've ever seen Ian in this serial. He just kind of goes absolutely nuts and decides to hold people at gunpoint until he manages to get the Doctor back, which mad respect to him, because I just really, really loved that about this episode, about how chaotic it was and how scary it was. Because imagine turning around when you're looking around a museum and seeing yourself encased in glass and stuffed and being kept there. That must be absolutely terrifying. And then having to try and sort it so that it doesn't happen anymore without being able to take off is just, it's just such a good, it's a good serial, and it doesn't feel too stretched out, even though it's one of the longer ones of the serial season. And it's just, I just think it's one of these ones that kind of perfectly crafted, and it's up there with the Planet of Giants for me for this serial as season, as one of the high points.
The Chase. This is it, lads, the farewell episode for the icons that are Barbara and Ian. William Russell and Jacqueline Hill leave the series together in this serial to be replaced by Peter Purves, who plays Stephen Taylor. Peter Purves also has a cameo in this serial as a completely different character, an American at the top of the Empire State Building. Similar to the Keys of Marinus in the previous season, it has a number of sets and storylines for location throughout the main plot. It consists of 6 25-minute episodes. It was written by Terry Nation, directed by Richard Martin, and produced by Verity Lambert. There were many other locations considered for the chase, but the majority of these were repurposed for the Daleks' master plan, which would be shown in the next season. Also, if you are part of the fan base which watched the Doctor Who Twitch stream a number of years back, you will be pleased to hear that this is the serial in which Ian utters that very iconic line.
I want to sit in a pub and drink a pint of beer again. I want to walk in a park and watch a cricket match. Above all, I want to belong somewhere, do something, instead of this aimless drifting around in...
The Daleks have learned how to travel in time and are using this fact to hunt down the Doctor and to get rid of him once and for all. The TARDIS crew are unaware of this fact at first, taking a short break on a desert planet with the Doctor and Barbara resting and Ian and Vicky exploring. Soon though, everything gets messed up and the local populace are shocked as the Daleks invade as a way of getting to the Doctor. In a rather reckless attempt to distract the Daleks, the gang manages to escape the planet only to find the Daleks are still following them. The Doctor then proceeds to land in various locations and attempt to shake the Daleks off his tail, and when that doesn't work, he attempts to build a bomb to destroy them. They first land on the top of the Empire State Building, where a young American man becomes bewildered at the two ships appearing and disappearing. Then they appear in an old ship, where the Daleks terrify everyone into abandoning it and jumping overboard. This was the first attempt by the show to explain the mystery of the Mary Celeste. Next up is an old haunted house with the exhibits of the ghosts, Dracula, Frankenstein monsters and other horrors that terrify the Doctor and gang, while also impeding the Daleks. It's at this point that Vicky becomes separated from the rest and has to travel on the Dalek spaceship. She watches as they create a robot that looks and sounds exactly like the Doctor in order to hunt the companions down. By the time the Doctor reaches the last place that they land, he has built a bomb and is unwilling to leave without first rescuing Vicky. A bunch of doppelganger shenanigans then occur before Vicky is reunited with the real Doctor and they all escape to a large floating city above the forest. It is here that they meet a young man named Stephen, who has been stranded here for many years with only his toy mascot for company. Together they set up the bomb and plan to escape, but at the very last minute, Stephen runs back to get his mascot and seemingly dies in the explosion. The Doctor fixes the Daleks' time machine to take Ian and Barbara back to their own time and bids them a sad farewell before leaving with Vicky in the TARDIS. Unbeknownst to them, Stephen has survived and snuck aboard.
We made it!
I don't believe it.
London 1965!
Anyway, The Chase is probably the tightest, I would say, of the Dalek serials from the first 2 seasons, although it still does drag a bit on the first 2 episodes, I think. But it also introduces the new companion that was going to replace Ian and Barbara, Stephen Taylor, who is introduced
right from the start, from a little mascot, which kind of shows his, his soft side. It took me a while to warm up to Stephen, mainly because I feel like once you leave behind a really, really lovable companion set like Ian and Barbara, it's very, very hard to move on. I find that even now, like trying to go from, for example, the 8th Doctor audios, which I'm going to talk about later, I found it really hard to move from one of his companions to the next one because I adored the first one a lot, and I just find it so difficult to kind of warm up to Stephen in the first couple of serials. But by the time you hit season 3, which I'm going to be talking about next video, it does work a lot better. The Time Meddler. With an arrival of another new companion comes the inevitable cycle of, wow, this thing can travel in time? No way! And that is essentially how the premise of the final serial of season 2 goes. It is also a new precedent for a historical episode that would carry on through the season and into the new series. These pseudo-historicals, part historical episodes with sci-fi elements, were a good way of revamping the historicals that had become less popular with the script editor. It was written by Dennis Spooner, directed by Douglas Camfield, and produced by Verity Lambert. It consisted of 4 25-minute episodes. This serial also introduced the first person other than the Doctor and Susan that came from their home planet, although the species was not yet revealed. It was also the time that a basis of their society was mentioned, the non-interference principle. Although all episodes exist, there is one episode which is missing a 12-second fighting sequence. This is likely due to the only copy of this episode coming from Australia, where the censoring laws cut some of the scenes dubbed inappropriate.
Yes, I shall miss them too. First Susan and now them. Come over here, my dear. I'd like to talk to you.
What about the control panel?
Oh, that's all right, my dear. It's already set.
The Doctor and Vicky discover Stephen in the TARDIS, and after making sure he isn't too badly hurt, they decide to let him stay. The new TARDIS crew then arrive in Northumbria in 1066, where Stephen firmly denies that they could travel in time. The Doctor acts much in the way that he did after Susan left, and decides to explore on his own. Vicky tries to convince Stephen that they have travelled in time, although it does not seem to go well as she had hoped. The Doctor meets the monk, a creature with his own TARDIS that comes from his own planet. They seem to recognise each other, and the monk traps the Doctor in order to stop him from interfering with his plans. Stephen and Vicky are taken in by a local village, and they find out the Doctor has gone missing, prompting a search. When they find the monk, he denies ever seeing him, but Stephen realises that he is lying. The Doctor, meanwhile, has escaped and is trying to stop the monk. Stephen and Vicky find the monk's TARDIS and discovers that he has a plan to stop William the Conqueror from winning the Battle of Hastings by changing history. In order to trap him, the Doctor removes the components from the monk's TARDIS, shrinking it in size and leaving him outside of it with no modern supplies. The Doctor writes him a letter, and the gang leave Northumbria wishing the locals good luck.
What's he done? He's taken my dimensional control.
And to round off the season, we have the last episodes, or the last serial, called The Time Meddler. Now, The Time Meddler is brilliant because it introduces the first Time Lord other than Doctor and Susan. They aren't called that yet, of course, but the monk is just absolutely hilarious. He just bumbles along, trying to cause chaos, being absolutely insane at all times, and I respect that so much for him, and he's just so good. He was the first ever kind of Time Lord to ever be a recurring character, as he's a lot of repeated throughout it. So it's set in 1066 in Northumbria, just before the Battle of Hastings, and essentially what the monk wants to do is he wants to stop the Battle of Hastings. So it's essentially Stephen getting used to time travel, the Doctor moping after Ian and Barbara, and Vicky trying to hold everything together because Vicky's the best. I really liked this one. It's, again, not as good as the Space Museum or Planet of Giants, but it's a solid serial that I just think is fun to watch. And that is it for the Time Meddler. Season 2 is the most complete season in early Doctor Who, and provides an excellent sample of First Doctor stories. The range and basis of many modern concepts come from this season, and it is easy to see the character growth from it. In my opinion, the second season holds a more consistent quality throughout, and although it has its low points, the way I put it, between the start of the season and the end, the main cast, excepting the Doctor himself, has changed. Also, because I finished the 2 seasons which consist of the episodes from the movies, I will be watching them soon and covering some expanded universe content for the Peter Cushing Doctor Who. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and on to season 3. See you next week!